Joining us in Ukraine Media Center, Ukraine Forum. It's year 9 of the war and day 320 of the heroic resistance of the Ukrainian people, and now we will be talking about the situation in Melitopol. Joining us online is the Mayor of Melitopol, Fedorov. Mr. Ivan, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Mr. Ivan, what's the situation as of now in Melitopol? How did the holidays pass over there, and what's going on the occupiers' side? Well, the holidays passed in a non very solemn mode because all of the inhabitants of Melitopol are imprisoned by the terrorists, by the Russian terrorists, and the terror is intensifying in the new year, and we see it in many directions, but the indicators for the Russians are not so good as well. Their personnel is being destroyed, their material is being destroyed in the territory of temporarily occupied Zaporizhia region. We also observe a trend, the intensification, the growth of number of Russians in the Zaporizhia region. During this weekend, the ammunition silo was destroyed in the Hypermash facility and also in Melitopol compressor, which is located in the short distance, just one fence across one from another. So in the night from Saturday on Sunday, there was a 5 hours detonation, and then at 1 o'clock that was in the night, and then during 1 o'clock in the daytime there was another shot at their ammunition silo, and that's probably why the terrorists intensified their pressure on the civil population. They, first of all, starting from today, they restricted the movement between the towns in the temporarily occupied territories, and they imposed some permits. They started issuing those permits for commercial transport, but shortly they will provide an option of giving these permits for private transport. For example, if you want to go from Melitopol to Tokmak or Berdansk. Also, it's worth mentioning that a few days ago they opened a chatbot with the help of which in Telegram Messenger they tried to look for Ukrainian resistance, Ukrainian guerrillas. They send out provocative messages to the people with the provocative questions, trying to find that resistance, trying to find those guerrillas that all of our Ukraine knows about already, but our citizens, they did not give up. They keep resistance no matter what. The situation is quite complicated with the medicine because the Russians tried to bring their injured ones to Melitopol and to Melitopol district. The medical personnel in their hospital is not sufficient, so they're trying to find free space in our hospitals. Just couple of hours ago, they just brought the whole refrigerator of the corpses to the morgue of Melitopol, and the morgue is now unavailable for civil population. Mr. Ivan, what's going on with our people who try to leave the territory, the district of Melitopol? We know that the situation is such within the last month. Unfortunately, the situation is only worsening. There were 3 ways. There is no way to get to Vasilievka and Zaporizhia. It was only 4 people who managed to make it within the last 3 weeks. 4 people within 3 weeks. So the project is being complicated even for those who want to go through Crimea. The bridge is out of operation, or it's in operation under some specific rules. I mean, the Crimean bridge, so people have to wait for the ferry, and the algorithm of operation of the ferry is incomprehensible as well. So it takes them like 4 weeks to, if people try to get to European Union through Georgia, through Russia, and it's just quite opposite. 70 to 80 citizens who end up in the occupied territories, they are being turned around by the Russian border guard personnel, and They don't let them through the border. And the last way through Berdyansk, Mariupol, and Novoazovsk to Russia, that route is in operation now, but is the same problem with in the border with the European Union. Mr. Van, as to the humanitarian situation in Melitopol, was the situation with the heating, with the communication, with the power supply? Now the utility services keep operating one way or another. I should just mention that during Christmas our citizens were left without water and power supply. But the most important issue now is the circulation of hryvnia and the availability of food and medicines. The enemy declared that they would restrict the circulation of hryvnia starting from 1st January, and they would only be left with ruble. It did not happen. So now in the markets and in the shops, the hryvnia is circulating, and the rate of hryvnia actually grew, because our people don't want to spend hryvnia, because everybody understands what's going on with hryvnia and what's going on with ruble during the occupation, that the ruble will just turn into useless papers. So yes, this is the problem we're facing now. And talking about the price of the food, it's 3-4 times more expensive than, for example, in Zaporizhia, Dnipro, or Lvov. I'm talking about meat, vegetables, fruit, bread, everything, and the hygienic means, household chemical products. So today the social component is quite complicated, and people have to choose what to buy and what not to buy. And it's also being complicated by the fact that now there's almost no work, and 80% of the enterprises, they remain closed. As to the line of defense being built by the Russians, we know that they keep doing it all the time, in both in Crimean direction and in Zaporizhia direction. If you have any new information as to such works, can you give us a couple of comments on that? Yes, I have to mention that last days they started building another line of defense between Melitopol and Crimea. So in their imagination, they realized that they may flee from Melitopol, and they will have to defend temporarily occupied peninsula of Crimea. Is the new line of defense that is emerging within the last days that they start building it. Also, a couple of days ago, they started building defense structure in the center of Melitopol. So they prepare our city for defense. The line of defense is being built. They equip the maritime containers for spending winter in them. So we cannot say that they fled somewhere. They're only preparing for defense. What does the local population say about the presence of Russians in the city itself? Is it a lot of them? Do they walk around the city in a calm manner? Is their presence increased in the city, or they concentrate in the line of in those defense lines? According to the words of those to the citizens who are left into the civil population, they say that the number of Russians who are dressed in civil is way bigger than the civil population itself. And a lot of Russians, they try to pretend to be the civils, but they also try to identify the resistance in Melitopol. The resistance representatives in Melitopol, they don't act in a calm manner. The people are hearing the sounds of skirmishes all the time. The Russian police comes to sort out the skirmishes between their military, which are happening between their own military. And this is the normal practice, that there is a military police who try to calm down the Russians who are in temporarily occupied territories. Thank you for this information. We have questions in the studio. Good afternoon. Olga Panasenko, Ukrinform. Can you please tell us? We know that the occupation of our territories is going on sometimes in quite intense and unexpected way, and hence the question: does the government of Melitopol understand that in the deoccupied city it will be necessary not only to distribute the humanitarian aid, but also to arrange communication, to renew the infrastructure, but also to organize the evacuation of the civil population and to equip certain shelters for the cases of shellings on part of the ousted Russians. Our team has a fully prepared plan for the occupation, which includes evacuation of the citizens of Melitopol. We've seen what's going on in Kherson. Our team was one of the first to arrive there, and we've seen how to help the citizens who are out of occupation, and to witness the difficulties faced by the citizens after the occupation. And we see these news all the time that Kherson is being shelled and our citizens are in danger. Unfortunately, now we have more questions than answers, but we are preparing for all possible ways of development of situation. We're buying generators, Starlinks, the food, and we're also preparing the buses for evacuation of civilians, so not to put them in jeopardy. Thank you, Mr. Van. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for all this comprehensive information you voiced. Dear colleagues, I'm reminding you joining us was Van Fedorov, the mayor of Melitopol. Our next briefing is at 1600 sharp. Joining us will be the military governor of Kharkiv, Alexei Nikubov, and we'll talk about the aftermath of shellings in Kharkiv and the operation of critical infrastructure there. So bear with us, and glory to Ukraine.